करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्तु निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधत्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So the purpose of the Gyanankusham, Ankusham means a kind of like a hit, not a physical hit, but a very definitive mental hit. So this is meant to make our minds fine-tuned in order to ascertain what we are looking for. So we are all looking for a sense of completion, of independence from all problems in life. So this is what we're looking for, and for that we need to have our minds that are very fine-tuned. So what does that mean, to be fine-tuned? So here what we should understand is that if the object is subtle, then the instruments for finding that object should be equally subtle, if not more so. So for example, if we want to look at a big animal like a horse or a dog or any big animal, it doesn't require even your glasses. You can easily see the big animal, the contours of a horse close by or even distantly. But if the object becomes smaller, then you need to have correspondingly more subtle instruments, starting with your glasses to focus on the object, and whether it's a fly or a bee, for example, and if you are nearsighted, then you need to get some glasses. And then if your glasses are not enough, if something very small, then you have to get a magnifying glass. And if that's not enough, then of course there is a series of corresponding instruments that are meant to look at, microbes, microscopes, X-rays, MRIs, electron microscopes, all kinds of stuff. So that's the principle that we should see. Now it turns out that Brahman, the Atma, is the subtlest vastu there is in the whole creation. Subtlest vastu that is, it is there, but it is so subtle that it appears not to be there. This is how subtle it is. Extremely subtle. It's even subtler than the space. Because the space requires a mind to appreciate it. Eyes cannot appreciate space as much as the mind can. So the self being even the very source of the space. Because the space also disappears in deep sleep, as you know. We've talked about it. So the space also is not there in deep sleep, but the Atma is still there, consciousness is still there. And to appreciate the space, you require even a more subtle mind than it is necessary for the space, for appreciating the space. So that's the situation. It is in fact so subtle that it is what is called avyakta. It is non-manifest. And it requires a very special way to appreciate that. In the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I would just happen to be reviewing Swami Shankaranandaji's commentary on it, the 4th verse. Beautiful verse. We'll have to really spend some time on it. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktadina. That's how the first one. So it is an avyakta, non-manifest. And pratyak swarupaha. And so that being the case, it requires a very clean, fine-tuned mind to be able to see it. That being the case, the purpose of the Ankushas is to really remove all obstacles from our mind. And the obstacles are that our mind is only dealing with things that are non-subtle. It is very involved in and is busy transacting with things that are not requiring a subtle mind. So things like, how much money did we make in the stock market? How much money did we lose in the stock market? What is there to eat? How are my friends doing? So these are gross objects that we are dealing with. But when it comes to the subtlety of the mind in terms of our feelings, punya papa, the karma, the very karana of the whole jagat, the presence of Ishvara, and so on, our minds are not used to doing that dealing with such subtlety. And then when it comes to really understanding the Nirguna Atma, which is my own Swarupa, it requires even more subtle mind. So what it means in the Ankushas is just a general background, is that we must require a conflict-free mind which is ignoring gross things and really going after subtle things. If we get hung up in gross things, then we do not travel towards the more fine-tuned things that we need to travel to. That is the reason for the Ankusha. And so here, the general tone of the Gyanankusha text is that if you get upset by people's behavior towards you, then you are now used to getting upset with gross things. And so how do you ignore it? Because we are used to getting upset with things that are not amenable to our liking. And so we don't know how to get out of it because our mind immediately gets upset when somebody says something to us. And so we get hung up with it. And we don't really travel beyond it. And so all the Ankushas are meant to to enable us to ignore, because that's not where my welfare lies. My welfare lies in appreciating the subtlety of my own mind, and anything that prevents me from doing so becomes an obstacle that I must learn to ignore. So that's the purpose of this whole thing. Okay. Now, the number 10 Ankusha is a very interesting and somewhat hard to take. It's something it is hard to appreciate. So we need to be prepared to appreciate the very interesting and harsh nature of it. So back a little bit of a background in preparing for appreciating the verse number 10. So you and I are human beings, and relatively well-adjusted human beings that are exploring the more subtle aspects of life. So, and what that means is that we have had a long prior history of being human beings. Because if we had been a recent human being who have evolved from animalistic stages, then we would have plenty of rajas and tamas, and we would display animalistic tendency. Yes, many people do. But if we are able to grow out of it, that means we have spent a lot of time in our previous life in getting used to a new status, which is a relatively conflict-free human being. So this is what we can assume from our behavior. Now, quite realistically, the Shastra points out that why is it that you are not seeking for the ultimate? Why have you not been seeking the ultimate in life? The ultimate objective is that we understand Ishvara, and by the understanding of Ishvara, we understand our own true nature. And we understand that we are really not human beings, we are something more subtle than that, which is the very sakshitvam of the Atma. Why is it that we have not done so? In the previous life, even though we were human beings, how come you have not really inquired into the truth about yourself? So this is a defect that we have. This is a dosha. And so this dosha, the result of this defect in us, has enabled us to really go through the whole process of taking birth again. Very difficult, becoming a child and slowly growing up, we all of that. We have talked about all of that. So this is the result of the dosha. The fact that we are born again in this situation clearly points out that we missed the chance of reaching for moksha in our previous life. And we are here now. We are here. Okay? This is the background that we should really know about, that the very fact that you and I are here as human beings is, if you want to call it, a punishment for not doing the right things in our previous life. It's a punishment that you are here, fresh, looking for simple answers that you should have been doing a long time ago, but you missed doing it. But whatever your karmas are, whatever your tendencies are, yours and mine, and so somehow we've missed it. So this is where we are. Okay? And so you should not be congratulating yourself. You should be happy that you're alive and functioning and so on. But the fact of the matter is that you missed a lot of chances in the previous life. And we have continued to miss it even this life. And now we are starting to gather our attention and we are moving in the right way. So this is what is called prasthanatraya. So the study of Vedanta has prasthanatraya. So prasthana means catching a freeway without any problems. So you want to go to some place, first you have to, I went to a wedding recently in Southern California, and for whatever reason we decided to drive with another couple, and quite frankly for the last, I think 20 years, I hope I'm not exaggerating, the last 20 years or so, I have not driven more than an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most to go to Sacramento, but I don't even think so. The most that I have driven in the last 20 years has been to either go to Monterey Carmel, when the guests come, or we go to the Napa County for a weekend. That's it, hour and a half. This was a 7-hour trip to south of Los Angeles. And to get to the freeway, it took us a long time on 101, 152, 156, then all the way up to go to highway number 5. There was so much traffic and left turn, all those kinds of things. Very tiring. I'm not used to it. Finally, we reached highway 5, and from that point on, it was, you could put your car in an autopilot and just go. So this is what is called prasthana. Similarly, in our lives, we have been going around looking for places to go. Where should I go? What is Vedanta all about? Who's telling me all this? Is it good? Should I go to Buddhism? What does Jainism have anything to do with this? Sankhya Yoga, this, that, or the other. These are all side tracks and so on. Finally, you say, oh my gosh, this makes sense. And so now I just have to gather up speed and go. This is called prasthana. Prakashthena sthana means really a modern way of looking at it is a freeway. After that, there is no red lights anywhere. There might be some traffic, but go. So the prasthanatraya, as you know, are threefold, which is Upanishads, at least the principal Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutra. These are the prasthanatraya, threefold prasthana. So anyway, finally we are now heading in this direction. But we should realize that we are human beings, still struggling. Yes, we are moving, but now there can be a lot of traffic, there could be accidents, there could be road rage, all the possibilities are there, even though I have a pretty good idea where we want to go. So the Ankusha now should be seen as, how do I fine-tune my mind so that I can move in that direction steadily and fast? Because I have My life is diminishing. I don't have that many more years to go. I've wasted a lot of time in this life and certainly in the previous life. And now that I've found the prasthana, I want to really make sure that I don't really have any more obstacles in my life. So this is the sense of the Gyanankusham. So let's go to number 10. In number 10, I think what I will do is not even spend time reading the Hindi because I want to really get going. Already I've spent a lot of time in the background. So the whole idea is, how do you deal with people that upset you in one form or the other? You don't expect to be upset by people, but they do find a way to needle you and to get you off of the track. How do you deal with them? So number 10 says, if I was not here, then devoid of a suitable object, these people who upset me would not have a visible reason for their displeasure. I should see that I am directly the reason for their wrongful actions, sinful actions, papa karma. It is indeed appropriate that I should feel shameful. So the sense of it is, just by being here, I provide a vehicle for them to be upset at me. A good example of that is a road accident. It's a road accident. So there, the accident means nobody wants to have an accident. You don't want to have an accident. The other party also doesn't want to have an accident, but you have an accident. So leave aside who is to blame and so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is that somehow you came on, the reason for they say the accident is two people trying to be at the same place at the same time. That cannot be. There has to be a difference between kala or desha. But two people trying to occupy the same kala and same desha, same time and same space, creates a conflict. Boom. So now, if you were not there, if you were in a different place, different desha, or a different time at the same place, that accident would not have occurred. So if the other person is very upset at you, leave aside who is to blame. That is that's a separate issue. But the very fact that you created the accident by being there means that the other party is at least partially justified in being angry at you. And then the best course of action really is, instead of really, you can still resolve, who is to blame and so on and so forth. I think I was telling you, I did have a about 2-3 months ago, a fender bender. And I decided, this is not going to be easy for us to. Clearly it was the other person's fault. But I said, we both have insurances. Let us resolve. If I have to pay another $500, so be it. I am not going to be upset by this by saying it was your fault and so on. It really is a result of my own teaching and reading. This I am not ready for this incident of this accident to upset me. No. Don't want to be upset. I'd rather just pay the fine and so on and so forth, even though I did have a pretty good case of getting out and trying to resolve it and saying, sir, this is your fault. I was already here. You didn't see me. And I could have done that, but I said, you know what, forget it. So I must compliment myself for living this example that I'm teaching, that I've refused. And also we went through the insurance and a few phone calls and so on, and finally got resolved. Okay, so this is the situation. So we must make sure that even if there are some things that happen in your life, you should take the approach, I am sorry that I am here, physically present, to be a recipient of your anger. You don't have to say anything to them and say, I'm sorry that I'm here. That's not it. I'm just talking about the mental attitude. And then you say, you know what? It is my fault. If I had not driven that day and sat at home and, read my book and so on, this would not have happened. And so clearly I had a role to play, and this is not going to upset me. Whatever it is through karma. Whatever it is, it's done with. So this verse says basically that I should realize that just by being born in this situation, and I provide a physical presence that can enable people to get very upset at me. So here Swami Maheshananji says that really speaking, if you because sometimes we keep the feelings inside, but if we do not have a chance to express it, it dissolves. So Gaudapadacharya in the Karika, we did this actually in the Mandukya Karika, calls it Kashaya. So Kashaya means some internal defect. You stew over it, and it does not allow you to see the truth, but it dissolves. But if you give it a physical actualization, then you concretize it, you make it concrete, and that expression of anger becomes deeply ingrained in you. Swamiji gave a very interesting example. He says, I had a disciple who was a professor at some big university. He didn't tell me what university it was. So he was a very well-recognized professor, so much so that the authorities of the university invited him to become the vice-chancellor. And so he really wasn't very happy because he wanted to just teach. He was happy teaching. And he wanted to go into an administrative office. And so there were a number of people, students, other teachers who came in to have him change his mind and said, sir, we want you to become a vice president because the post of vice president has been vacant for the last 6 months. And I think you're very qualified. I wish you would take it. So he says, I was talking to one of the students and I said, why? Why should I do that? He says, sir, can I tell you something? He said that we usually protest against the administration. And so if there is a vice chancellor's office, then we all crowd it, we circle it, and we raise slogans and so on and so forth, down with this university, they're not giving us this, that or the other. And he says, the absence of that person, we cannot express our anger. There's nobody listening if there is no vice chancellor. So he says, I have a vested interest. If you at least get there, then maybe we will protest and maybe we will not, I don't know. So this is the situation. And there is another beautiful example given here. So And that's interesting. Let me just close this verse. I'm just going to go on and not spend any more time on this. So here, Swami Maheshananji says that if a person expresses an anger towards a normal human being, then it is considered to be a bad action, a sinful action. To be angry at somebody is not a good thing to do. So that's a papa karma. So this is an action against a normal person. But suppose a person is a dedicated Vedantin, studying such higher reaches of the human existence, and people know this, that this person is really studying and he's a good person, he's a sadhu. And if the sadhu gives an occasion for someone to be angry at me, then the papa karma intensifies. Right? Because if you're angry at a normal human being, that's one thing, that's also not good. But supposing there is a, I wouldn't call it ourselves Mahatma, but somebody who is trying to become a Mahatma. And if someone gets angry at a Mahatma, that action is considered to be Mahapapa. It is an intensified Papa. So here the example given by Swami Maheshananji is that our scriptures say that any drug that you take to mess with your mind, to relax it, these days there is so much depression in the society, especially amongst the young people, that all these expensive antidepressant medicines have come up that really mess up your mind and they make you feel calmer, and then you may get hooked to it, And so any of the drugs, and in India we find that many of the swamis, they take this charas and to smoothen their anxieties and so on and so forth. It's very common to do that. Not the swamis, but at least the sadhus that you see in Rishikesh, they're very fond of having charas. So our scriptures say that any medicine is bad, any kind of a drug rather, not medicine, any kind of a drug like this, artificial food, in order to mess with your mind is not good. But out of all of those, alcohol is the worst. One should just avoid alcohol. I'm not talking about just taking a little bit of wine somewhere that's not what this is all about. But if you really drink, supposing you take some scotch, and a lot of people have a scotch every day, sometimes 2 of them and so on. No, absolutely not. So giving doing a wrongful action against a Mahapurusha is considered to be a great papam, just like having alcohol is a great papam. And so if that happens, then it is very incumbent on the Mahapurusha to ignore it even more. Because you can say, don't you know I'm a big person and I'm doing this, that, or the other person, he doesn't care. So really speaking, the antidote to anger in these situations is to just close the eyes and simply say, I am sorry that I am here. I'm ashamed of it, really. It says that you should be ashamed of it. And you're ashamed of it because of the previous life's action, non-action. Why don't you get on the Prasthana Traya in your previous life? You must have wasted your time so much playing cards and doing trivial things that you wasted the previous life. At least now you are doing it, but you have to pay a price for delaying it this long. And so this is the verse number 10. So with that, let's move on to the next one. How much time did we have? 8:34. Okay. All right, let's go to verse number 11. I will read the Hindi, just we now have some time. I was able to cover quite a bit of ground. तपस्या, श्रवण, पदार्थ शोधन, समाधान, इन यति धर्मों में विघ्न होते हैं क्रोध आदि। दुर्व्यवहार आदि से मुझे होता है क्रोध, ऐसा ही विघ्न है। दुर्जनों द्वारा आरोपित दोष वाला होकर भी यदि मैं धैर्यपूर्वक शांत बना रहा तो इस विघ्न की कामना पूरी नहीं होगी। तपस्या, श्रवण, पदार्थ शोधन, समाधान, इन यति धर्मों में विघ्न होते हैं क्रोध आदि। दुर्व्यवहार आदि से मुझे होता है क्रोध, ऐसा ही विघ्न है। दुर्जनों द्वारा आरोपित दोष वाला होकर भी यदि मैं धैर्यपूर्वक शांत बना रहा तो इस विघ्न की कामना पूरी नहीं होगी। So he says, discipline, austerity, careful listening, ascertaining the meaning of the teaching, and meditation. These are the qualities of a student of self-knowledge. The principal obstacle to these efforts is being upset, being angry, etc. If I am able to maintain my mental equilibrium despite these disturbances, then I can blunt the efforts of others to create these obstacles for me. So one more time, discipline. So we can even translate that. So here it says tapasya. So tapasya means disciplined austerity. Shravanam means careful listening. And we will explain this in a little bit more detail a little while. Shravana, even careful listening. Padartha shodhan, ascertaining the true meaning of the teaching. And samadhanam, samadhi. Samadhanam and samadhi are the same thing, means meditation. Nididhyasanam. So, Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam and Tapasya. So these are the dharmas of a student of self-knowledge. In yati dharmo mein vigna hote hain. And the main obstacle to them it looks like we're back on, there was flashing red light, which means that perhaps we had lost the connection, but it looks like it's okay. If there's a problem, please let me know by sending me a text or something. So there, what we were saying was that we are, in attempting to do these 4 requirements, which are the qualities of a Vedantin, of a Yati, Yatnashilaha yatihi. The main obstacle to that is anger, being upset, etc. Now, if I am able to maintain my equilibrium for a length of time, ignoring all obstacles created by others' actions towards me, then I can say that their actions were blunted. Otherwise, they will be happy. See, when people do misbehave with someone, if people misbehave with someone, they want the person to be upset by their misbehavior. Isn't it? If you are doing something which is not good to someone, your expectation is that as a result of your actions, the other person will become angry. And if the other person gets angry, you are relieved and happy that your efforts to upset that person were successful. But suppose the other person negates your actions by not being upset by it, then you are going to be disappointed. And you feel, I tried my best to upset the other person, and how come that other person is not getting upset by it? Is something wrong going on? Did I not try hard enough? Or what? So, in the Mahabharata also, in the war between the Pandavas and Kauravas, when there were some very powerful arrows and other things that were thrown by the Kauravas, then Sri Krishna and other wise people said, these are very powerful and these will kill us. So the best thing is to completely lie down on prone to the ground and let it pass by. Otherwise it will just cut your head off. And so you everybody just lay down, and it was not able to do anything because it just passed by. And then they were able to get up. So sometimes the best thing is to just blunt it by taking remedial actions and not let it get upset to you. So this is what it is said, that really speaking, these 4 qualities that you are pursuing are very important to you, and we will briefly discuss them. But if the other person is going to provide some obstacles in the qualities of these 4 things, then the best thing is not to get upset by it and to ignore it, because you are going in a particular direction and you don't want any obstacles to upset you. Okay, so with that, let us examine the four qualities. So first one is tapas. So here also Bhagavad Gita says, Shitoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha mana apamanayoho. So he says that may you maintain your equilibrium in cold or heat, with pleasure or lack of pleasure, and with people singing praises of you or criticizing you. Mana apamanayoho. So here Swami Maheshananji makes a very important point. It's an important point. He says, so there are, in this regard, well, first of all, the shitoshnaha is what upsets your body. Shitoshnaha upsets your body. Then sukha dukkha upsets your mind. And mana apamana upsets your buddhi. So all three important instruments have different ways of getting upset. This is what Bhagavad Gita is pointing out, Sri Krishna is pointing out. And he says, Nirdosham hi samam brahma. So this is an interesting point to see. Let me just point out that. So Nirdosham hi samam brahma means, this is also from Bhagavad Gita. Here Sri Krishna says, samam, samabuddhi. Samabuddhi does not mean, this is where the issue comes in, it does not mean that you look at Shitoshna, Sukha Dukkha and Mana Apamana as the same. So here Swami Maheshananji says that supposing somebody offers you 3 of something or 7 of something, the 3 is not the same as 7. So he says, it doesn't matter. You can just say, you can either give me $3 for it or $7 for it. That's not what is talked about. Then what? So Bhagavad Gita says, Nirdosham hi samam brahma. The word sama is a synonym for Brahman. So what that means is that when your body is upset by being hot and cold, when you have sukha dukkha, or if somebody insults you, or somebody gives you a lot of kudos, then instead of being involved with the peculiarities of that, you think of the Atma, which is Brahma, which is independent of them. So to memorize and to think about your reality, who you are, even when you have all these distinct differences of experiences, this is what is called samam Brahma. Samabuddhi. Samabuddhi doesn't mean that that the elephant and the cows and small and big all remain the same to you. No, those differences will remain, but your drishti is towards your own Atma, which is independent of them. So this is what we need to really inculcate in our life, is to really not, so exactly the same thing, that instead of being involved with anatma, any times there is an anatma problem, you should think of how you are different from that. This is what we have to learn. And by the way, the same thing is true for this word called ekagrata. So we'll talk about this ekagrata in our Vedantic classes quite a bit. So here also the ekagrata is defined by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita as mana and indriya are together. Your mind and your sense organs are under the control. This is called ekagrata. Here also, just like sama, ekagrata does not mean they become the same. No, they will not become the same. The word ekaha refers to Brahman alone. Ekam advitiyam Brahma. There is only one reality in the world, which is Brahma, which is advitiya. There is no dvaita, dvaita rahita. Everything else is a lower level of reality. So this is what is called eka. So ekagrata means, again, the same thing as samabuddhi. Beautiful explanation, really. I thought this was very revealing. So when you are faced with conflicts, instead of focusing on the conflict and the resolution of the conflict, to a certain extent, you may have to do it. But the more important thing is this becomes a springboard, an excuse for you to start to appreciate Brahman, the Atma, which is independent of these conflicts. It is not to resolve the conflict. If there is a conflict from a Vyavahara standpoint, then you do the best to resolve it. But you don't expect to resolve it completely. Instead, you turn your mind towards the Atma. This is what is called ekagrata. So, this is one thing. We are just talking about the 4 qualities, remember? So, this is the tapas. And here, one other thing. How are we doing with time? Good. Another thing, that the tapas is one of 2 kinds. One is external tapas and one is internal tapas. The external tapas is to resolve things that are different than me, clearly outside of me. And I can actually turn my attention away from them relatively easily. Like for instance, supposing you're watching something and you're feeling this is either a TV show or a movie or some social thing and so on, you can escape that just by going to another room, or just closing your eyes or closing your mind towards it. You can resolve it because you feel this is disturbing me and I don't need to continue doing that, and I'm okay just removing myself from this situation, which is okay. Sometimes even that is not easy to do, but it is relatively straightforward. But compared to the other kind of tapas, which is sukha dukkha, mana apmana, you see, now here we can make a distinction between shitoshna, means heat and cold. So if it's excessively hot, which is it is in India, it is just amazing how hot it is. And if those of the people who cannot afford even a fan leave aside an air conditioner, how hard it must be. But at least you can get into a shade and then have a drink of water, or you can just fan yourself like this, even if you don't have an automatic fan. You can take some remedial steps. But when it comes to sukha dukkha and mana apamana, this is an internal tapas which is much more difficult to resolve than the external tapas. Resolve than the problems created by the external tapas. How? Because they are one with you. Your sukha dukkha, because the sukha is not like heat which is coming from outside, it is inside, sukha dukkha. Similarly, a feeling of being insulted is in your own mind. And so to distinguish that through the viveka between Atma and Anatma requires more preparation, more work on your part. But eventually you can do it. All that is said is that it is more difficult to do. Be prepared for it. So this is one of the qualities. Then the second thing was Shravanam. So here the only worthwhile thing to say is, Shravanam doesn't mean just listening to the teacher. You have to be actively participating. So this is what is called Sahana Vavatu. Maybe both strive together. The teacher also doesn't say, okay, this is my job is done, I'm just going to read this. And if people want to listen, that's fine. No. You have to work hard to make sure that you are expressing the concepts clearly, helping people resolve it, and if there are questions, then you have to answer them. So this is the teacher's responsibility, and the student's responsibility also is to think and to listen and to question and to discuss. And so this is what is called, this is why the prayer is so important. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. May we not have the conflict. And this is Viryam Kara Sahaviryam Karavavahai. May we both together strive for excellence. So this is what is called Shravanam. Then comes the next one, which is Shabdarth. What is it? Shabdarth. Padartha, sorry. Padartha Shodhanam. Padartha Shodhanam means to inquire into the meaning of the words. So here, Swami Maheshananji says, clearly it has two parts to it. One is called Paroksha Jnanam, which is, we have seen that what Paroksha Jnanam means, which is something which is understood but not yet intimately experienced. And the other one is Aparoksha Jnanam, which becomes your own knowledge. So these are this is the Padartha Shodhanam. Then the third one is Samadhanam, Samadhi. Samadhi means that it's interesting that when you start meditation, sometimes even other things are not very important, but when you start meditation, then your mind becomes more disturbed. It brings in all kinds of stuff that it didn't do before. Why? It is because it finds you quiet and receptive. So the mind says, now is the time to bring certain doubts. Now is the time to really bring up something that has not been thought before. So this is one thing. The other one is, this is a well-known thing, that by doing samadhi, you are becoming independent of the various devatas who are supporting you, and you are their servant. You are the Pashus and they are the Pashupatis. And so all kinds of Devis and Devatas are holding you. And by doing samadhi, you are escaping their hold, and they don't like it. So they provide certain obstacles in your ability to do samadhi. That's the case, then what is to be done? You have to resort to their boss. You have to bypass them and just go straight away to Ishvara and say, Ishvara, can you please talk to them, not to disturb them? They would not listen to you, but they would listen to Ishvara. And so you have to really go straight away to the big boss and say, I am your Shishya, please remove these obstacles from me and let me do the samadhi. So this is the Vada Samadhi. Then the last one is that you have to do this with dhairya. With dhairya. In the Hindi translation it was there. Yeah. दुर्जनों द्वारा आरोपित दोष वाला होकर भी यदि मैं धैर्यपूर्वक शांत बना रहा तो इस विघ्न की कामना पूरी नहीं होगी. धैर्यपूर्वकम. So what is धैर्यपूर्वकम? This is also given in the word dhira. We have seen that word come up many times. Dhira. What does that mean? So what that means is, with patience over time. This cannot be done overnight. It's almost like a test of Ishvara. Our objective is, this is what Swami Dayanand used to say, that sometimes you get the fever. I want to really study this. Oh, this is wonderful. So you tell everybody, I'm attending Vedanta classes and I'm very happy and so on and so forth. I tell you, this is what I've seen, experienced from many of my students. All of a sudden, I have seen so many times, people will say, oh my God, I love your classes. Why didn't I find them? I felt very happy, this is good. We've got a new student who really wants to, and they will, I'm not asking for any kind of an compliment, but they could write to me and say, oh, this is wonderful. One of them, he was ready to move from Texas to California. And I had to tell her, no, stay right where you are. Then all of a sudden, after 2-3 weeks, they disappeared. And I wrote to her and saying, I haven't seen you in the classes. And he says, okay, I missed a couple of classes. And then, this is what happens. Swami Dayanand used to say that people get a fever. They become feverish about this, and then the fever drops, and then you become cold again. This is not going to happen, not very helpful. Dhairya means a steady, you don't have to have intense desire, but it should be a steady, sincere loyalty towards your own understanding, step by step. This is what Swami Paramarthananda also, I've seen him points this out so much time. And my own experience, that it really requires, it's almost like a test by Ishvara. Is he serious or what? It's easy to say, I'm studying this and I got this, that. No. You have to really display, so dhairya purvakaha. If you do that, then all the obstacles in your way are blunted. And you follow these 4 things, tapasya, shravanam, padartha shodhanam, and samadhanam. And these 4 things, which requires, of course, vairagya. So also, if you do this, then you are on a prasthana. You are on a highway. So that's the meaning of the verse number 11. We have some time to go over the next one. So let me go to the next one, number 12. Maybe I won't complete it today. I also didn't study it completely, but I think we can get to the gist of it. Number 12. Oh, this is 13. I knew there was something new that I had not seen. Yeah. So, first the Hindi. He says, number 12, दुष्चेष्टाओं से ये दुर्जन मुझे विचलित करने का प्रयास न करें तो प्रशांत रहने के लिए मैं भी अधिक यत्न नहीं करूँगा। अतः यह मेरा अत्यंत लाभ कर रहा है, क्योंकि हिला हिला कर ठोके गए खूंटे ही मजबूत होते हैं. What a beautiful verse. Just a lovely verse. Let me read it one more time. दुष्चेष्टाओं से ये दुर्जन मुझे विचलित करने का प्रयास अगर न करें, तो प्रशांत रहने के लिए मैं भी अधिक यत्न नहीं करूंगा. अतः यह मेरा अत्यंत लाभ कर रहा है, क्योंकि हिला हिला कर ठोके गए खूंटों ही मजबूत होते हैं. So the English translation of that is, if this person who is upsetting me and continues to upset me, not just once, but used to needling me, if he doesn't do that, if that person doesn't continuously needle me, then I also will relax. We did it once, and I dealt with it somehow or the other. And after that, that person never needled me again. Then I also forget about it and I relax. Relax how? Into my old habits of non-enquiry, of non-effort. So, to keep my mind peaceful, I will not try continuously. प्रशांत रहने के लिए भी मैं अधिक यत्न नहीं करूँगा. I will not try my best to stay even-minded. Therefore, if that person is used to needle me every now and then, I should see that these are efforts by Ishvara to make me very firm in my path. How firm? So there is a normal thing that when you are putting down, supposing you are putting some kind of khamba. Khamba means khunta, or khunta means some kind of a stick in the ground with cement. You know, sometimes you want to get your trees be standing upright. So next to that, you have to put some kind of a wooden stick, and you stick the wooden stick into the ground by digging a hole around it and then putting some cement around it, or some, at least if not cement, but at least some pebbles and so on, watering it so make it even. When you do that, it is very necessary for you to test whether the stick that you put in, the danda that you put in, is firm or not. So you have to pull it back and forth, and oftentimes, this is exactly what happens, you find that there are holes left that you had not filled, and so you have to put some more cement or some more pebbles, etc., and then keep moving it until you find that it is now hardening and it's not moving anymore. If you don't do that, then you really haven't done the job of securing it to the ground in a very firm way. So there is actually a nyaya. There is a nyaya for that. He says, thun Sthuna Nikhanana Nyaya. Sthuna Nikhanana Nyaya. So there is a long list of these Nyayas, means they are uh, they are meant to observe the reasonableness of the various truth of them is called Nyaya. So this Nyaya is that you move your khamba, your post, wooden post or something, back and forth until it becomes really firm. Then you have done your job. So now we can say that suppose a person does not continuously needle you, you do not get a chance to do this moving back and forth. You just did it once and you feel, okay, I'm okay, now I have been able to conquer my emotions and I don't have to be upset about it anymore. As Swami Viditatmanandaji was saying one time, was such a funny, and actually it really did happen. So there was a student that came to Swami Viditatmananda and said, Swamiji, you know what, I have progressed so much in Vedanta, I don't get angry anymore. Swamiji was needling him a little bit. He says, well, I'm very happy that you don't get angry and upset, but sometimes we think we have conquered anger, when in fact it has not yet been invoked again as it used to be done before. So the anger is still there, but it's not, it hasn't been tested fully. So this person said, no, Swamiji, I have tested it many times, and I'm telling you, I used to get angry very easily. And now, because of the teaching and so on, I am now completely okay. It's gone. Swamiji said, but you know what? It does appear like that. Many people think that they have gotten rid of anger, but in fact it is kind of lying low sometimes. I'm not saying it's for you, but it does happen. So Swamiji said that the person said, no, Swamiji, I am telling you, this is what happened. There were a couple of times that I would have expected myself to get angry, and I was very proud that I didn't do it. So Swamiji says, you may be right, but all I'm telling you that many times people think like that, but it is really... But then after the third time, the person said, Swamiji, don't you believe what I'm telling you? I never get angry. Why are you keep on telling me that? Swamiji laughed. He said, yes, well, you're getting angry at me. So this is, and he says that if a person continues to needle me, then I should really think that it is for my benefit. Why? Because I have to test this post, whether it is firm or not. And at this point, I haven't done so. And so you should really thank the person and saying, thank you for needling me again, because that gives me a chance to really practice my sense of peace and moving firmly towards where I want to go. So this is the verse number 12. I think I may have a couple of more things on it to talk about it, but I'm happy that we did all 3 verses today. And so we have 13 more to go and 4 more Tuesdays. So we should be able to finish it, I think. So with that, I close the class today. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Nityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So Balabaniji, it's your question. Is it possible that Vedanta can lead to know the Atma? Of course, that is what the objective is. And so, in simple terms, Vedas have two or three different segments to it. So one is what is called Karmapara, one is called Upasanapara, and the third one is called Jnanapara. So the Karmapara and the Upasanapara are to give you the Vedic knowledge to perform your actions in life in such a way. So, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Karma Yoga with the right attitude, and in the Vedic Karma Kanda, it means that you do the prescribed yajnas in such a way that this leads to a improved life in the subsequent lives. It does not give you understanding in this life, but you keep doing it so that you actually improve your life hereafter. So this is what is called Krama Mukti. So Krama Mukti means that you keep on improving, and hopefully you don't regress, because there is always a possibility of regressing. And the Upasana is karma plus the prayers associated with it. So both the karma and upasana form a effort based on apraptasya prapti, one which is not understood to be mine, but I want to get at it. So this is one thing. Then the Jnana Kanda, the Ganapara part of the Vedas is called Vedanta. Vedasyanta iti Vedanta. So there, the objective is to know the Atma. And the objective is to become a Jivan Mukta while you are living, to become Mukta. And so there, the Karma and Upasana form Chitta Shuddhi sadhanas, as is what I've been saying, all these four things that we saw earlier. Tapasya, Shravanam, Padartha Shodhanam, and Samadhanam. These become the sadhana, and finally you are able to see the subtlety of the Atma with a calm mind, with a prepared mind. And so that leads to Jivan Mukti while you are still alive. To Mukti while you are still alive, called Jivan Mukti. So that's essentially what the Vedic role of the Vedas and the role of the Vedanta is in our lives. Yeah. Right? Doesn't appear to be any more questions or observations. So with that, I close the class and we'll hopefully see you next week. Hari Om.